This presentation is on how to use OPC Report.net, which is an automated report engine that can execute reports to generate PDF files, HTML, Microsoft Excel, Word, printer reports, all kinds of different outputs, even images like PNGs, JPEGs. Those are all kinds of different output types that the report engine can generate automatically, either continuously or based upon events from data sources like OPC servers, .NET applications. Microsoft Excel can be a source to generate these reports. So the first step in creating a report is to use the report designer. And after installing OPC Systems.net, you have the program group here, opcsystems.net, and there we'll find the report designer. The report designer can also be launched from the configure reports section. There's a toolbar option with a button there to can launch it. With the report designer, we're going to create what is called a page report. Anytime you want to start over and refresh it and make a new one, you can just select File, New, and refresh that. The section report is like our old classic OPC report engine. The page report is the one to use that's more up to date with a lot more features in it. And there's also master reports you can do similar to a page report, but there's an RDL report type for generating master reports with sub-reports. So we'll click OK on the page report. Again, that is the default report type that comes up. The first thing you'd want to do in the report designer is define your data source. So to do that, we'll come over to the Report Explorer in the upper right, right-click on Data Sources and select Add Data Source. And there we'll specify what database provider we want to use to connect to either SQL Server or Oracle. Maybe if you want to go to Access, you use the OLADB provider. I'm going to use SQL Server to some data that I've already logged using OPC Database.net. And in the server name, I'm going to use the same server name that I would use with the SQL Server Management Studio to connect to that database engine. I'm going to use Windows Authentication, and then I'll basically be able to select which of the databases in that database engine I want to connect to. There I'm going to select Data Test. We'll click OK. The next thing under the data source is we'll define a data set. So we can have multiple data sets. They can be connected to views or tables in a database. The nice thing about the new report designer, it's got a query builder. So if you want to do like join multiple tables together, we can do that very easily. And also put like different filter conditions right in the query statement. So we'll select the query option here and use the button, or sorry, the icon that says to edit visual query design. And we select that, up comes the query tools, and there we see our table that's in that database. If we expand that a little further, we'll see the individual fields within that table. Now if you want to add just the entire table, you can just double click on it, but I'm going to add them one field at a time. The reason is I may want to also sort by or order by different individual fields. So I'm going to drag the date and time field in and the ramp field in. And later, you might, if you're going to use the report viewer directly, you might want to specify it to be sorted by a particular, in one of the particular fields. If we look at the SQL select statement, this is what the query builder built for us. Now you're welcome to manually type that in, especially if you're an SQL expert. But I'm not, so I use the designer, and often it creates the syntax for me. So it's a great place to come test out some different things and stuff like that. You can also just execute that to see that you are getting some data through that data set right there. And then we'll click Save, and we'll save that into the query string. And now we'll click OK, and now we're ready to add some items to our report. So the first thing that we might want to do at maybe the top of the report is like a Sparkline, which would just be a quick little trend line of some data. And what we'll do is we'll just connect this up. If we go to the property dialog of the Sparkline, we'll see that we have a data property that comes up here. And what we want to do is under the value pull down, we'll use the expression. Now you're going to see this multiple times, is to build an expression for a value that you want to appear. And the types of data that can appear in a report, of course you can create constants. Just put a number or something like that if you want to in there. But you can also have common values that you assign. You can have parameters that are preset, where if someone was to execute the report with a report viewer, they would have to enter specific data. Most commonly, you're going to connect into fields, and then possibly also some of the common functions, which would be aggregate functions like average, min-max, standard deviation. So those are where you find those kind of things, is under the common functions of aggregate. They're easy to build as well. So let's go in and let's specify the ramp value to be part of that Sparkline. And then we'll click OK, and we're done. And the next thing, let's go ahead and drag in from the data set, just drag in, say, date and time. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this below the Sparkline. So at the left, I'm going to make this a little bit different than just date and time. I'm going to use one of those aggregate functions I just talked about to actually put min, so that we can see what date range we're actually talking about. So if I come back in here under expression, I can either just manually put it in here and just wrap it with min, or if I don't know that syntax and I'm looking it up, I'd come here to common functions, aggregate. Let's go down to min, double click on that, select insert, and then you see that it's looking for an expression inside of that function. So we'll take our existing field of date and time, put that right in there, and now I'm just going to use copy so that I can generate the other one real quickly. So if let's put another field right in here, and we'll stretch this one out. We may want to do some formatting on this as well. We can use a format function of that format text object. And here our data source is defined under value, and what we'll do is, instead of it being that, I'll just use Control V and replace min with max, because I know that's what it is. So now when we generate the report, we'll be able to say what the minimum date and what the maximum date are for the report range itself. So if we just take a quick preview of that, there's what that report looks like. It's not very fancy. We got a black line on the Sparkline. Let's change that. We come up here to the line style. We can change the line color to red. That'll kind of sharpen it up a little bit. You can put images and all kinds of other things. Now, let's say we wanted to know the detail of that. Every single record, we want those to also be populated in the rest of this report. What I'll do there is I'll use a table. And tables are pretty easy to work with, but if you haven't done it before in the new report designer, it can be a little bit to figure out. So let's put a table in there, and really I only have two fields. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to select that third column, hit delete columns, get rid of that one. Let's change the size of this thing and what we want it to be. I'm going to make it about that big over, about that wide. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to the Report Explorer, and let's go down to our data sources again. And if we take date and time and just drag it into the middle row to the first column, we see that in the top cell, that's going to be the header cell for this. We'll have it automatically put in the text date and time. In the middle cell, it put in the actual field of date and time for us. That's going to be the actual records that we have. And in the bottom field, we have nothing. We left that blank. Let's do that again for the ramp value. We'll put it again just right into the second row. And again, it automatically populated the header up here. Now, it doesn't have to be ramp value. I could just call it ramp if I wanted to. It doesn't have to be equal to the field name. I can put anything I want in there. Now, cool thing that automatically kind of knows what you want to do. So if I drag into the bottom row, it puts in a sum. And it would basically sum all of the values from ramp and get you a result. Maybe instead, we might be looking for like average of this ramp signal, something like that, or min-max, any of those types of things. And over here, I'll go ahead and just type in the word average just so that that last record in that table, so that people know what that is as far as an average. Now, the next thing we want to do is to give to designate where this table is going to appear as far as what it's taking up. I'll take the gray handles and I'll drag down into the report as large as I want it to be to fill up that area of that report. Now, what happens if we have more than just that much data? Well, let's just run that to see. If we go preview, there we see we have 19 individual pages. Okay, there we have the min and max date and time, and then we have multiple pages that we can go through. Each one has the Sparkline at the top, but the other pages have the individual detail. But I've got a lot of extra space here that I could take up if I wanted to. So I can use what is called an overflow placeholder. And I can drag this one, draw this into an area where the data can spill over into that second part of the page. So that what I would do is, this is just an overflow placeholder called overflow placeholder 1. There we see that name. And then if we go to the table here, I can go to where there is a property called overflow name and just define it to that one. There we go. Now if I run that, we only have 10 pages because the data overflows into the second part of the, it comes down to the bottom here and then fills over into the next section of the page and then moves on to the next page for the next set of data. All right, that is just a review of the report designer. Now, the fun stuff is, let's see if we can automatically generate that report based upon an event. And then also optionally email that off. So it's just automatic unattended report generation from here on out. So let's just give this one a file name called test page. And notice it has the extension RDLX. And that's going to be picked up by the OPC report engine in just a moment. We'll minimize the report designer. We don't have to close it, but we're pretty much done with that for now. Now let's go to Configure OPC Systems. And I should have showed you where that is. I launched that pretty quickly. If we go to the program group, opcsystems.net, there you'll find the Configure OPC Systems. Now, if you've done any tag configuration, data logging configuration, that's the same application. We're using that to do that. So what we want to do is we want to select Configure Reports. We want to select the local service. It can also do remote configuration, but we want to get that that file to be able to browse to it. Make sure the path is relative to the OPC system service where you're doing it. So if you're configuring a remote OPC system service on the internet or even on your local area network, make sure the OPC system service path that we're specifying in the browse here to browse for a file is relative to where the service is itself. So I'm just going to grab my test page. I'll put in a report name here. I'll call it test. I know that's not very exciting or very unique, but it works for what we're doing. And then we've got the output type. That can be HTML web pages that you can view then on your smartphone, PDF files. We might have images. Can generate Word or Microsoft Excel, spreadsheets. RTF's kind of like compatible with some other document types. We can even send data directly to a printer and print things out if we want to. So with the PDF type, that's very common for emailing reports. So we're going to use that type itself. Now we're going to specify where is this report going to be generated. And so let's specify a location there. Let's just pop that into the temp directory. Okay, now if we want to have some characters append before the report name, I can call it, let's just call it XYZ, just so you can kind of see what happens there. And then to the onto that report name, we're going to append on the date. Now, if we had, say, one for each hour, we want to append on the hour, or one for each minute, we can do that. Now, if you want some flexibility, you can have the actual report come from an OPC Systems.NET tag. That would be a string data type, which might be a calculation, might come from an OPC server, an item, whatever. That can actually determine the name of the file. And then the execution type, that can be continuously, maybe hourly, daily. Continuously, you can basically specify at what rate you want to execute the report. I'm going to do this based upon a tag. And what we're going to do is we're going to look for a tag in the OPC Systems.NET tag configuration. It's going to be a local tag, and we're just going to connect it up to pump.value. That's a Boolean tag. When it transitions from false to true, it's going to execute the report. Now with the filtering, we have two types that we can do there. There is the filtering for just a quick and easy thing to say, okay, give me the previous hour. I'm going to filter based upon date and time, and only give me the records where the date and time field matched up with just previous hour only. Or maybe previous year, previous month, things like that. Or you can say custom and say, yeah, go back just maybe 600 seconds, go back 10 minutes back in time. Or that's one way to do the filtering. Or if you wanted more control, to say filter based upon when batch ID is equal to this and lot number is equal to that. In the query string, I could put in something like where ramp underscore value. That was my field name in that one of the fields in the report, where ramp value is less than 10. So what we'll do is we'll return only the records where the ramp value is less than 10. Now that query string is just going to be appended onto the end of our data source. Remember our data source here in the report designer? That was here under data set. If I come back here and say edit and look at this query string here, it would be just the same as adding where ramp value less than 10 right here, right in this this field. Now what if I wanted to override the entire thing? What I could do is I could bring this back and I could put that in as part of the entire query string, and then you would say override the entire data source with the query string if you want to. So it basically does that entire select statement with the additional ramp valuation. But let's just make it simple there. We'll just do the append with not overriding the entire thing, but just adding on to the end of it. Now, what if I wanted this to be more dynamic, where this value of 10 comes from another tag or a PLC variable, where like maybe its lot number equals something, and where the lot number comes from either an operator entry or from an OPC item. Well, there what we would do is we would say set query string with the tag, and then we would connect it up to a calculation tag. And that calculation tag would be a string, and it would concatenate the where ramp value less than, and then it would also have an additional string conversion of some other tag value. And that tag value can range from any value that you would like it to be. Okay. For now, we're just going to keep things simple so that you understand what's going on there. Then, when we're generating the reports, we can optionally email them out to specific users from and to. You may, if you're emailing and you're using Gmail, you want to enable SSS. And then the port number is typically 465. But sometimes other Gmail accounts, it's a different port number. So if you're having trouble, look that up, specifically what port number you should be using. But Gmail is typically port number 465 with SSL enabled. That's important. All right. Or you can use your own email server as well right there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add this report to the report engine, and now anytime the anytime the pump value changes from false to true, it's going to generate that report. I can then save the report configuration to a file, and then under configure options, I'm going to select localhost, and under the report configuration right here, I would browse for that file that I just saved to. And that way, when the OPC system service starts up, when the computer starts up, it automatically loads that report configuration with all of the reports that you have defined under Configure Reports. We're now ready to test this, so let's just use the example application to turn that pump on. So if we go to examples, let's just go to like the old WinForm example. We can also do this through web interfaces or WPF, all of this. We're just going to use this quick and simple WinForm application to turn that pump on. So it's going to transition from false to true. Now if we look in the directory of temp, we have a file which begins with XYZ because that's with the base that we put it in, and then it appended the date onto it, which is 2015-01-12 with extension PDF. So if we double click on that file, it'll automatically open. And there's the results of the file. Now this particular report only came out as 1 page long. The reason being is that the ramp values, there wasn't enough records to spill over into the next page because the ramp value, we're only looking for values less than 10. If you look at the details of that, you can see that right there. And also if we had the Sparkline, we really should put a scale on here as far as a min and max on the scale, but really the only values we're reporting in the Sparkline are just ramp values that are going from 0 to 10. Now there are other videos and other information about OPCReport.net, specifically on how to use OPCReport.net with charts. You'll find that as another video that we'll be releasing. And all of this information you can find at opcsystems.com. At opcsystems.com, you'll find our training page, and if you select the training page, it has an entire list of all of our videos and content on all of our product features on how to set up each one of them. And you'll find our contact information under the contact page. So if you have a question, you can email support@opcsystems.com, or you can call us at 800-533-4994, or outside of the U.S., it's 303-679-0898.